tension ignites after Jimin and Jungkook's explosive fight when Taehyung is caught sneaking into Jimin's room at midnight. Everything changes. "Why the hell are you here, Taehyung?" Jimin's voice was sharp, breathless, cutting through the cold midnight air like a blade. The door had slammed shut behind Taehyung before he could turn back. The silence that followed was thick, suffocating, like the air before a storm. Moonlight spilled across the room, illuminating the tension carved into Jimin's face. His jaw was tight. His hands shook slightly, though he tried to mask it. Taehyung stood motionless in the dim light, his silhouette long and lean against the wall. A bead of sweat rolled down his temple, not from exertion, but from the weight of what he'd just done. "I didn't come here to fight," he whispered, voice low, almost pleading. I needed to make sure you were okay." Jimin's laugh was bitter, a soft exhale that tasted of disbelief. "After what happened with Jungkook tonight, you think you can just walk in here and play savior?" Only 2 hours ago, the dorm had echoed with screams, Jimin's voice, hoarse with anger, clashing against Jungkook's raw fury. No one knew what exactly had triggered it, but it hadn't been like the others. This time, something had broken. The way Jungkook stormed out, shoving past everyone like a bomb about to explode. The look in Jimin's eyes afterward vacant, as if part of him had walked out with Jungkook. And now, Taehyung, silent all night, had slipped into the room like a shadow. No knocking, no warning. "I told you to stay out of this," Jimin said, backing away. "Don't make this worse." Taehyung stepped forward anyway, slow and deliberate. "You think I don't see it? The way you're unraveling? You haven't slept in 3 days, Jimin. You barely eat. You shut everyone out. I'm handling it. You're drowning." His words hung in the air like smoke. Jimin didn't answer. His eyes flicked to the corner of the room, the one spot where Jungkook's hoodie still hung on the chair, abandoned. It hurt to look at, but he couldn't throw it away. That was the problem. He couldn't let go. Taehyung noticed the glance, and something shifted in his expression. A softness under the edge of frustration. "You still love him," he said, not as a question, but as a confession. Jimin clenched his fists. "That's none of your business." But it was, and they both knew it. Because Taehyung hadn't come here just as a friend. Not tonight. Not with the way his eyes kept searching Jimin's face like he was looking for an answer to a question he hadn't dared to ask for years. "I shouldn't have come," Taehyung said finally, his voice cracking at the edge. "But when you didn't answer my texts, I panicked. I thought—" He stopped himself. The thought was too dark to say aloud. Jimin's shoulders sagged. "You thought I'd do something stupid." "I've seen that look before," Taehyung said quietly. "In myself." Silence fell between them, heavy, but not empty. Outside, thunder rumbled distantly, a summer storm creeping closer. "You were right," Jimin said finally. "I'm not okay." That truth, spoken aloud, seemed to fracture something. In Taehyung, in the room, in the night itself. He crossed the space between them, and this time, Jimin didn't move away. Taehyung's hand hovered over Jimin's shoulder for a second before resting there, gentle but solid. "Then don't pretend with me." Jimin closed his eyes. Let the touch anchor him. But the spell broke with a sharp mechanical click, the sound of a camera shutter outside the window. Both of them froze. Jimin turned to the window just in time to catch the shadow ducking away into the alley behind the building. His blood went cold. "Someone's watching us." Taehyung was already moving. He yanked the curtain shut, checked the lock on the window. His expression had changed, no longer tender, but alert, calculating. Jimin stared at him. "How long has this been going on?" Taehyung didn't answer. His silence said more than words ever could. That night wasn't just the aftermath of a fight. It was the beginning of something much deeper. Secrets were no longer safe. Trust was a currency they couldn't afford to spend carelessly. And as the storm outside finally broke, drenching the city in torrential rain, inside the dorm, two hearts beat against a silence full of things unsaid, each of them waiting for the other to break first. "You let him in," Jungkook said, voice quiet but vibrating with the kind of rage that trembles just beneath the skin. "You let Taehyung in. After everything." Jimin didn't answer immediately. The hallway light flickered overhead, casting erratic shadows on the pale walls. His back was against the cold wall, arms crossed like a shield across his chest. He looked like someone standing in front of a firing squad, except he knew the bullet was coming from someone he used to love. "I didn't let him in," Jimin said at last, his voice thin, defensive, but not entirely convincing. "He came in. You didn't stop him. Because he was worried about me." Jungkook laughed. Not the amused kind, the kind that sounds like it hurts. "Right, worried. That's why he sneaks around at midnight and doesn't tell anyone. That's why he touched your face like that. I saw it, Jimin." The silence that followed was unbearable. It had only been 6 hours since Jungkook returned to the dorm. He had left the night of the fight with fire in his blood, fists clenched, eyes too blurry to see the road clearly. No one knew where he had gone. Yoongi had tried calling. Namjoon even offered to drive out and look for him, but Jimin hadn't said a word. He had sat in his room like a statue, the walls closing in, heart beating like it was being crushed by invisible hands. And now, Jungkook was back. Not with reconciliation in his eyes, but with suspicion, with betrayal. "You were supposed to need me," Jungkook muttered, more to himself than Jimin. "But the second we fall apart, he's the one you let see you break." "Don't twist this into something it's not," Jimin said. "Nothing happened, but it almost did, didn't it?" Jungkook stepped forward, closing the space between them. His breath was warm with fury, his gaze locked, desperate for something. Confession? Guilt? An apology? "He came into your room. That means something. What happened between us was already broken before he walked in," Jimin snapped. "Don't pretend he caused the cracks." Jungkook recoiled slightly, but only for a second. And yet, he was there, like he always is, like he's been waiting for his chance. "He was worried about me because I stopped answering messages, because you screamed at me and left me bleeding." Jungkook's face twisted. "I left because you refused to see me. You pushed me away. Every day. Every time I tried to hold on, you shut the door. And you think yelling, throwing things, storming out in the middle of the night, that's holding on? You made me feel like I wasn't enough." Jungkook burst out, and his voice cracked on the last word. "You kept talking about pressure and image and needing space, but you never let me in. You just pretended everything was fine until you couldn't anymore. And then you ran to him." Jimin's voice was cold. "I didn't run to him. You left. You always leave." They stood in the silence that followed, both breathing heavy. Neither of them moved. And then Jungkook said, very softly, "Do you love him?" It was the question Jimin had feared, not because he had an answer, but because he didn't. "I don't know," Jimin whispered. "I didn't think about it. I couldn't. Not after what we said to each other. I wasn't even thinking straight. But you let him touch you." Jimin's hands curled into fists. "Don't reduce me to that." Jungkook shook his head, pacing a few steps, unable to stay still. "You don't get it. You don't get it. That night I left, I didn't go to anyone else. I drove to the Han River. I sat there for 3 hours thinking about whether I was worth anything anymore, whether being with you even meant anything to you. Don't say that. I thought about driving straight into the water," Jungkook said. "I didn't. You know why?" Jimin's voice was a whisper. "Why?" "Because I thought, no. I hoped you'd come looking for me. That even if we were done, you'd at least care enough to try." Jimin's eyes were burning now, blinking hard against tears. "You left without telling anyone. You disappeared." "Because I needed you to see what this was doing to me," Jimin exhaled sharply. "We're not children, Jungkook. You can't manipulate me into loving you more. It's not manipulation. It's honesty. Honesty would have been not breaking a chair in front of me and screaming so loud the neighbors called security," Jimin snapped. They stared at each other, breathing like they had just come out of a war. A door opened down the hall. Taehyung. He froze in the threshold, taking in the scene. The tension was thick enough to cut. His hair was still damp from the shower. He had headphones hanging around his neck. Jungkook's eyes narrowed. "Of course. Don't," Jimin said quickly. "Don't start this again." But Jungkook had already turned. "You couldn't wait, could you?" Taehyung looked calm. Too calm. "This isn't your business anymore, Jungkook. I made it my business," Jungkook snapped. "For 2 years. Everything I had, I gave to him. And you." He took a step closer, fury building. "You watched us fall apart. And now, You're picking through the pieces. Taehyung didn't flinch. I was there before you were. Don't forget that. Right, Jungkook hissed. Always lurking. Always waiting for him to be weak enough to crawl into. Jimin stepped between them. Stop it, both of you. But they didn't move. Taehyung's voice was low, sharp. If I wanted to take him from you, I would have done it years ago. Jungkook, lungt. Jimin shoved him back. Hard. Enough, he screamed. I'm not a prize. I'm not a goddamn battlefield. The hallway fell silent again. Jungkook's chest heaved. Taehyung's jaw clenched. I can't do this, Jimin said quietly. Not if you two are going to treat me like a war to win. He turned and walked away. And for once, neither of them followed. The next day, it was everywhere. A blurry photo. A headline. Taehyung spotted, sneaking into Jimin's room after fight with Jungkook love triangle in BTS. The leak had come from someone in the building. Maybe a staff member. Maybe a stalker. The photo showed just enough. Taehyung slipping in through Jimin's door, his hoodie pulled low, Jimin's shadow behind him. The fans exploded. The company panicked. Namjoon called an emergency meeting. Tell me this isn't what it looks like, he said, barely keeping it together. No one answered. Taehyung sat with his hands folded, staring at the floor. Jimin looked pale, eyes hollow. Jungkook wasn't even in the room he had walked out before the meeting started. Namjoon pinched the bridge of his nose. You guys realize what this could do, right? This isn't just rumors. This is trust. With the public, with each other, with the team. Still, no answer. I don't care who's mad at who. I don't care who's in love or not. What I do care about is that we are heading into a comeback with more instability than ever before. If this spirals, we lose everything we've built. Jimin finally looked up. What do you want us to do? Fix it, Namjoon said. Privately, publicly. I don't care, but fix it. Because if this turns into a scandal, none of us are walking out clean. Later that night, Jimin found himself outside Jungkook's room again. The door was shut. The light underneath it was on. He stood there for 5 full minutes before knocking. When Jungkook opened it, he looked tired, bruised emotionally, though his face bore no marks. He leaned against the frame, saying nothing. I never meant for it to become this, Jimin said. I know. I still care about you. I know. But I don't know if it's enough anymore. Jungkook's throat bobbed. He looked down. Then tell me what you feel. Jimin hesitated. I feel lost, he said finally. Like I'm standing between two people who used to know me. And now neither of them do. Jungkook didn't reach for him. And Jimin didn't step closer. They stayed there, in that narrow space between what was and what could never be again. Both of them quietly mourning something that hadn't died all at once but bled out, piece by piece. Somewhere down the hall, Taehyung closed his door, and this time, Jimin heard the lock click. Not like a threat, but like a promise that some doors, once opened, will never truly shut again. Tell me the truth, Taehyung. Did you come into my room that night to help me or to finally take what you've been waiting for all along? Jimin's voice cracked as he stood at the threshold of Taehyung's room, barely keeping himself upright. The words tasted like metal in his mouth, sour and sharp. His heart was pounding, each beat like a warning drum, screaming that whatever came next, there would be no going back. Taehyung stood near his desk, the warm light from the small lamp beside his bed throwing shadows across his face. He looked different, less polished. His hair was disheveled from sleep, his hoodie creased, his expression unreadable. He didn't flinch, but his eyes betrayed something old, something raw. You think I've been waiting for you? He said finally, and there was a bite to his tone that stung more than Jimin expected. You think I've just been sitting in the corner, counting down the days until you and Jungkook shattered? I don't know what to think anymore, Jimin whispered, because everything feels like a lie. What we had, what we have, what that night meant. I can't even tell if I was reaching for comfort or for an escape. You didn't reach for anything, Taehyung replied, stepping closer. You let yourself fall, and I caught you, because he didn't. Silence filled the space between them. You caught me, Jimin repeated, half laughing, half crying. And now the whole world thinks we're together. Are we? Taehyung asked, and his voice dropped to something low, something dangerous. Tell me, right now. Look me in the eye and tell me what you feel when I'm near you. Is it guilt? Is it shame? Or is it the thing you've been burying since before Jungkook ever touched you? Jimin looked up. His lips parted to answer, but then he didn't, because the hallway behind him echoed with the unmistakable sound of something shattering. He turned just as the vase by the entryway hit the ground, fragments dancing like glass confetti. Jungkook stood there, breathing hard, eyes wide, fists clenched. His knuckles were bleeding. "You don't get to have this conversation without me." His voice wasn't a shout. It was low, calm in the way that made the air go cold. Taehyung stepped in front of Jimin, instinctively. "A mistake." "Don't," Jungkook growled. "Pretend like you're protecting him. Not when you're the reason he's broken. You're the one who left him in pieces," Taehyung snapped. Jimin raised a hand. "Enough." "No," Jungkook cut in. "I want to hear it. I want to hear him say it. Was I ever enough for you, Jimin? Or was I always second place to this?" He gestured toward Taehyung like the very thought of him was poison. Jimin's mouth opened, but words wouldn't come. "Not fast enough. I gave you every goddamn part of me," Jungkook said, stepping forward. "I changed for you. I turned myself inside out. I broke for you." "Then why did it feel like you were never really there?" Jimin finally shouted. "You say you gave me everything, but you never listened. You only saw what you wanted to see." "I saw a version of you that trusted me," Jungkook spat. "And I didn't think I had to fight for that. I didn't think I had to compete." "You didn't have to. Until you made me feel like I couldn't breathe." There it was. The real wound. The silence that followed was suffocating. Taehyung's jaw tightened. Jungkook looked like he'd been punched. Jimin exhaled slowly, trembling. "I loved you, Jungkook. I still do," Jimin said, voice shaking. But somewhere along the way, that love became fear. And I kept asking myself, do I stay because I love him? Or because I'm afraid of what it means if I stop? "Stop pretending like Taehyung didn't help you answer that," Jungkook growled. "He's not your savior. He's your exit strategy." "Maybe he was," Jimin whispered. "Or maybe he's just the first person who didn't ask me to be perfect." "You think I wanted you to be perfect?" Jungkook snapped. "I just wanted you to be mine." "I was never yours to own," Jimin replied. And this time, the calm in his voice scared both of them. Jungkook stepped back like he'd been burned. The room spun in silence. Taehyung didn't say a word. The doorbell rang. They all flinched. It was 2:13 in the morning. Jimin moved first. He padded softly to the door, hands trembling slightly as he opened it. A man stood outside. A courier. He handed Jimin a white envelope. "For Park Jimin," he said. "Signed delivery." Jimin took it, confused, closing the door behind him. His fingers worked at the seal. Inside the envelope was a single printed photo. A photo of Jimin, asleep, in his bed, taken from above. His blood turned to ice. His breath hitched. There was no note, no name, no explanation. Just the timestamp at the bottom. The night Taehyung had come in. They gathered in the practice room 3 hours later. None of them had slept. Namjoon stood at the front, holding the photo like it was a detonator. "This is no longer about personal issues," he said, voice deadly calm. "This is a breach of safety, a stalker." And they were in the building. The room was cold. Hoseic rubbed his arms. Jin stared at the floor. Yoongi sat in the corner, silent, calculating. "How did they even get in?" Jin asked finally. Namjoon looked at the security team logs. "No one unauthorized entered the building that night, which means..." He didn't finish the sentence. Taehyung stood abruptly. "You think it was me?" "No one said that," Namjoon replied. "You didn't have to," Taehyung snapped. "I was the only one in that room with Jimin." "Exactly," Jungkook muttered under his breath. Taehyung turned to him, furious. "You're still looking for reasons to blame me now for something I didn't do." "Why are there no security camera recordings from that hallway that night?" Yoongi asked quietly. "I checked. They're all wiped, just for that one floor, for 3 hours, deleted remotely." The room went still. "What are you saying?" Jimin asked. Yoongi looked up. "I'm saying someone with access covered their tracks." That night, the dorm was silent, too silent. Jimin sat alone in the recording studio. His phone buzzed next to him. Unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. "I saw everything," the voice said. It was distorted, male, but warped. Jimin's blood ran cold. "Who is this?" "I saw him come into your room. I saw you cry. I know who you really are." and I know what you're hiding." Jimin stood up, panic rising. "What do you want?" The voice laughed, soft and horrible. "You'll find out. Soon." The line went dead. Jimin stood there, staring at the reflection of himself in the studio glass. For a moment, he didn't see himself. He saw someone unraveling. The version of Jimin they all thought they knew he wasn't real anymore. And somewhere out there, someone was watching the pieces fall apart, one by one. "You have 30 seconds to start talking, or I'm calling security." Jimin's voice was calm, cold, almost surgical as he stood in the middle of the empty dance practice room, holding his phone out in front of him like it was a weapon. His other hand trembled slightly, only slightly, but enough to betray the panic, eating him alive from the inside. Taehyung stood across from him, arms crossed, breathing hard from having rushed there after Jimin's cryptic message. The moment he entered, he knew this wasn't about rehearsals, or a meeting, or anything normal. Jimin's eyes were bloodshot, and he held the phone like it had burned him. "Who's threatening you?" Taehyung asked, stepping forward. Jimin took a step back. "I said talk." "I don't know what you're talking about," Taehyung said. But he hesitated, and Jimin saw it. That moment, that flicker, that second too long before denying it. "You posed." "Because I'm trying to figure out what's going on." Jimin tossed the phone onto the floor between them. It landed screen up, a silent witness. "I just got a call from someone who described my room, who described you coming in, who knew what I looked like while I was asleep. There's a photo, sent to me, from above." Taehyung's face twitched. "You think it was me?" "Don't turn this on me," Jimin snapped. "You were the only one in my room. The cameras were wiped. The only way that could have happened is if someone had internal access. Someone who knew the system. Someone like you." Taehyung's jaw clenched. "That's insane. Say it again," Jimin challenged. "It's insane, Jimin. You think I would spy on you, record you? For what? For leverage?" "I don't know anymore," Jimin shouted, the first crack in his voice since the confrontation began. "I don't know what the hell to think because everything is falling apart and every time I turn around someone is hiding something from me." Taehyung ran a hand through his hair, pacing. "You know me. You've known me since we were kids. You think I'd ever hurt you? You already did," Jimin said softly. "You crossed a line that night. You came in when I was vulnerable. You stayed. You touched me. And now someone has a photo of that. Someone who's using it to get inside my head." Taehyung's voice was quieter now. "Do you regret that I was there?" Jimin looked up, and the silence between them was heavy, charged. "I regret that I don't know if it was real anymore." Taehyung flinched like he'd been struck. Then, out of nowhere, he laughed bitter, broken. "You know what's funny? You're blaming me for saving you. I didn't ask to be saved. You wanted someone to stay. I stayed. Jungkook left. I stayed." Jimin's voice wavered. "And I don't know if you stayed for me or for you." Before Taehyung could reply, the door behind them creaked open. Jungkook stepped in, silent as a ghost, his face unreadable. But his eyes were wildfire. "Good," he said. "You're both here." He walked in, closed the door behind him, locked it. Jimin's spine stiffened. Taehyung turned, arms dropping to his sides. "I've had enough of this triangle," Jungkook said. "I'm not interested in playing second place. I'm not going to be the one quietly watching while the two of you dance around each other and then pretend like nothing happened." "We're not pretending," Jimin said. Jungkook's gaze snapped to him. "No? Then what is this? A moment of clarity? A chance to pick a side? Are you two together or not?" "No," Taehyung answered before Jimin could speak. Jungkook tilted his head. "Interesting. Didn't look that way in the photo." "That photo is fake," Taehyung said quickly. "No, it's not," Jimin said. Both turned to him. "It's real," he continued. "I was asleep. You were there. That's why it feels like a betrayal. Because I didn't even know you were watching me like that." Taehyung looked horrified. "I wasn't watching you. Not like that." Jungkook's voice was ice. "But someone was." He stepped forward, took out a flash drive, tossed it on the ground. "I broke into the backup server tonight." "What?" Jimin said. "I know the tech guy," Jungkook muttered. "I asked him to restore the deleted security footage from our floor. He owed me a favor." "And?" Taehyung asked. Jungkook crouched, plugged the flash drive into the studio monitor behind them. The screen lit up. Footage played. The hallway outside Jimin's room. Timestamp. 3:17 a.m. There was Taehyung entering. A few seconds passed. Another figure appeared, hooded, gloved, carrying something in one hand flat, like a phone or camera. The figure entered the room after Taehyung. The door didn't close fully. The figure stood in the crack, raised the phone. Click. The image froze. "That's not me," Taehyung said. "I didn't see anyone else." "Exactly," Jungkook said. "Because they came in after you, while you were inside, and you didn't even know." Jimin stepped closer to the screen. The footage was grainy, but the figure's build was familiar. Too familiar. "Zoom in," he whispered. Jungkook tapped a key. The figure's face was slightly visible under the hood, and Jimin's heart dropped. Because he knew that face, and he wished to God he didn't. By the time the three of them confronted the staff member, the junior manager assigned to the team since last year, it was already too late. His apartment was empty. The laptop was gone. The phone disconnected. All that was left was a single note, scrawled on the wall in red marker. "The world loves your lies. I'm just showing them the truth." The company scrambled. Namjoon called an emergency blackout. No phones. No online access. All members were moved to a safe house. The truth was too dangerous now. Not just about the photo, but about what it implied. Someone had been following them, recording them, for weeks. And they had help from the inside. The worst part? Jimin's old phone, the one he had misplaced months ago, was found at the manager's apartment. It had hundreds of recordings, private rehearsals, fights, makeups, and just one that made Jimin nearly collapse when he heard it. It was his voice, broken, crying, saying Jungkook's name in the dark, the night after their worst fight. The same night Taehyung had come in. The manager had spliced it into a sound file, uploaded it to a fake Twitter account. It had already been downloaded over 2 million times before the company caught it. The internet was now ablaze with speculation, shipping wars, and the question that would haunt them: who did Jimin really love? By the end of the week, the group had gone radio silent. The company released a vague statement about security concerns and personal healing. But inside the safe house, no one was healing. Jungkook wasn't speaking. Taehyung barely ate. And Jimin sat on the balcony every night, watching the stars, wondering if love could survive betrayal, silence, and secrets. Wondering if he had become the villain in someone else's story. Until one night, there was a soft knock. Jungkook. No words. Just a look. He sat beside Jimin, handed him an envelope. Inside, a photo of them from a year ago, laughing in a hotel room in Paris, taken by Taehyung. On the back, Jungkook had written, "Before the world got in the way." Jimin stared at it, then looked at him. "What do you want from me now?" he whispered. Jungkook's reply was so soft it barely reached him. "Truth." Jimin closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, he spoke. And everything began to change. "You want the truth?" Jimin's voice came out hoarse, as if it hadn't been used in days. "Fine, but don't ask for it, unless you're ready to hear something you might never unhear." The balcony was wrapped in silence, broken only by the distant hum of the city and the faint rustle of leaves in the wind. Jungkook sat beside him, expression unreadable. His fingers curled tightly around the edge of the chair, knuckles turning white. Jimin held the photo in his lap, the memory of Paris staring back at him like a ghost. Jungkook didn't speak. He only waited. "I loved you," Jimin began, voice steadier now, though his throat still fought it. "God, I loved you more than I could understand. You were my safest place and my sharpest blade at the same time. Being with you made me feel invincible and invisible in the same breath." Jungkook's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. "But somewhere along the way, I stopped recognizing the version of me I became around you. I started lying to myself to keep you, telling myself the screaming was just passion, that the silence was just fatigue, that your jealousy wasn't cutting me into smaller and smaller versions of who I used to be." Jungkook turned his head slowly, eyes narrowing. "So, this is my fault?" "No," Jimin said softly. "It's ours. I let it happen. I let myself love you in a way that ignored the warning signs. And you loved me in a way that only saw the parts of me you wanted." A beat passed. Jungkook looked away. "You could have said this before," he muttered. "I didn't know how. Every time I opened my mouth, you looked at me like you were bracing for a bullet. And I hated being the one holding the gun." The silence between them thickened. Then Jungkook whispered, "Did you love him too?" Jimin's throat caught. "I don't know if it was love," he said finally, "but it was real. What I felt that night with Taehyung, it wasn't planned. It wasn't romantic. It was just two broken people trying not to fall apart." Jungkook let out a humorless laugh. "Do you hear yourself? You say you loved me. Then you let someone else see you like that. I let someone see me. You stopped looking a long time ago." The words hung in the air, thick and irreversible. Jungkook stood. His hands shook slightly, and he shoved them into his pockets to hide it. "So what now?" he asked. "You go to him? You think he's some kind of salvation?" "I don't think there is salvation anymore," Jimin replied. "Only damage control." Inside the safe house, tension had turned physical. The members barely looked at each other. Namjoon had set up a rotation for press handling, communication blackout enforcement, and in-house therapy, but nothing seemed to be working. Hobie avoided confrontation entirely. Jin had become the stone-faced liaison with the label. Yoongi was the only one who still studied the leaked materials obsessively, his room covered in notes and potential timeline reconstructions. And Taehyung was unraveling. He barely slept. The bags under his eyes deepened each morning. He paced at night, sometimes out on the porch, barefoot, shirt damp with sweat, even in the cool air. His phone had been taken along with everyone else's, but he kept a folded piece of paper in his pocket, a printout of the stalker's final message. He read it like scripture, over and over. Jimin found him that night in the kitchen, standing barefoot in the dim light, staring blankly at the sink. "I told him," Jimin said. "Taehyung didn't turn." "Told him what?" "The truth. About what happened between us. What didn't happen. Did it help?" "I don't know." Now Taehyung turned, his face unreadable. "And what about me? Do I get the truth too?" Jimin leaned against the counter. "What do you want to know?" Taehyung stepped forward, just enough to make Jimin flinch. "Did you use me?" he asked. Jimin didn't answer immediately. "I didn't know I was," he admitted finally. "But maybe I did. Maybe you were easier to fall into than facing how empty everything was becoming with him." Taehyung's breath hitched. "So that night when I touched your face, when I sat beside you in the dark, when you didn't pull away, what was that?" Jimin's voice broke. "It was the first time I didn't feel alone." Taehyung's face cracked, just a little. "Do you feel alone now?" Jimin looked at him. "I feel watched. Like even my grief is a performance someone else is uploading." They stood there in silence until Taehyung reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded note. "I found this under my pillow." Jimin unfolded it slowly. "He's not who you think he is. No name, no timestamp. Just the same red marker as before." "Another warning?" Jimin asked. "I don't think it's about you," Taehyung whispered. "I think it's about someone else." Yoongi called them all together the next morning. He had pieced it together. The manager wasn't acting alone. There had been another access point. Someone feeding him real-time data. Someone inside the label. Yoongi's theory was simple and terrifying. There's someone trying to destroy us from within. Not a fan, not a reporter, someone with a vendetta, and they know every move we make. Namjoon rubbed his temples. "This is a conspiracy theory, Yoongi. It's a pattern," Yoongi shot back. "The surveillance, the media leaks, the perfectly timed photo, the sound edits. You think that manager had the skill to splice emotional context into a file and make it sound like something it wasn't? You're saying someone's trying to frame us?" Jin asked. "I'm saying someone's trying to unravel us," Yoongi said. "From the inside out." And then he dropped the bomb. "I think it's someone in the management line." Everyone went silent. Jimin's hands went cold. Taehyung's eyes flicked to Jimin, then to Jungkook. "No," Jungkook muttered. "It can't be." But Jimin had already seen it. The moment of clarity. The quiet assistant, the one always near, the one no one noticed, the one who'd been assigned to follow Jimin after his last burnout 6 months ago, the one who brought him tea, who reminded him of appointments, who always asked the soft questions. Lee Mina. They broke protocol and returned to the main dorm without telling the company. Namjoon protested. Yoongi insisted. Jin backed them. Jungkook and Taehyung didn't speak the entire ride. Jimin stared out the window, trying not to breathe too loudly. When they arrived, the dorm was quiet. Too quiet. Inside, Jimin found the assistant's room unlocked. Empty. except for a single USB drive left on the desk. Jimin picked it up, hands trembling. He inserted it into the laptop. There was only one file, a video. He hit play. It was a recording, static, then a voice. Mean us. I never meant for this to go so far. I only wanted him to see what he was doing to you. I only wanted him to stop hurting you, Jimin. But then you stopped answering me. You started leaning on him. Taehyung. And that wasn't the plan. That wasn't supposed to happen. The screen flashed. Cuts of footage. Jimin asleep. Jungkook pacing after their fight. Taehyung crying in the hallway. I loved you, her voice said. The screen went black. And then, a second voice. Distorted. Episode 1 was good, wasn't it? Let's see how many more they'll survive. The screen cut to static. Jimin stood frozen, the room spinning. Taehyung caught him just before he collapsed. Jungkook stared at the screen like it was a loaded gun. Yoongi walked out of the room and said only one thing. This isn't about love anymore. And he was right. Because now, it was war. Lock the doors. All of them. Yoongi's voice was sharp, unflinching. There was a tremble beneath it, controlled, barely noticeable, but it was there. Jin moved without a word, securing each entrance, while Namjoon grabbed the USB, slipped it into an anti-tracking pouch, and looked at Jimin, who was still on the floor, knees bent, hands pressed to his face, like the world might disappear if he closed his eyes hard enough. Taehyung hadn't moved from beside him. He hadn't said a word since the video ended, but his fingers were tight around Jimin's wrist, anchoring him. Jungkook stood at the window, watching the dark street below. He hadn't blinked in a while. Yoongi paced, his voice low but deliberate. She wasn't working alone. You heard it. That last voice, it wasn't hers. That wasn't Mina. That was someone else. She might have started it, but someone else took over. Jin returned, eyes wild. There's a black car across the street. It's been there since we pulled in. Engine's off, no plates. Namjoon checked the time. We've been compromised. Again. If that drive hadn't been left out for us to find, we wouldn't even know we were in the middle of another operation. Why would she leave it out like that? Hoseok finally asked, voice trembling slightly. That's not sabotage, that's a confession. No, Taehyung said suddenly. That's bait. Everyone looked at him. Jimin finally moved his hands from his face. What do you mean? Taehyung's voice was grave, darker than they'd ever heard it. She wanted us to know. She wanted you to know, Jimin. That she was trying to protect you, that her obsession was justified. She wanted to be seen as the martyr, not the villain. She left the video to control the narrative before the real story came out. She wanted to be the final version of truth, Jungkook murmured. And someone else hijacked the script. Namjoon took a breath. We're dealing with psychological warfare, digital manipulation, emotional targeting. We're not just victims, we're characters. And someone's directing this. Jimin stood slowly. He looked pale, but his voice was steady. Then I want to find the director. Taehyung looked at him. Jimin. No. Jimin's voice sharpened. They're not just coming after me anymore. They're coming after us. They've used my voice, my face, our memories, and now they've used her to leave a trail of emotional destruction. And whoever's next won't just get a warning. They'll get ruined. Jungkook turned around. Then we stopped playing defense. Yoongi nodded. I have a plan. The room shifted, like a current changed direction. Yoongi pulled a battered notebook from his coat. There are 3 pieces of this puzzle, he began. The footage, the voice manipulation, and the access. Jin nodded. Someone on the inside gave Mina what she needed. Yoongi flipped to a page scrawled in fast Hangul. I found references to a mirror server. It's a system the company used during our 2020 comeback to test how leaks spread. They abandoned it, supposedly. But I traced a ping from the same server the edited audio files were uploaded from. Namjoon leaned in. You think they're still using it? I think someone reactivated it. And I think they're uploading our private data to it as a sandbox to see what goes viral, what sticks, what dies. Like testing us, Hoseok asked, horrified. Like testing how much the world can take before we break, Yoongi said. And whoever's behind it is using Mina's obsession as a smokescreen. Taehyung exhaled slowly. So how do we flush them out? Jimin answered before anyone else could. We give them what they want. The plan was insane, but it was the only way forward. They would record a fake breakdown. A private moment between Jimin and Jungkook staged, intimate and devastating. enough to trigger whoever was watching, enough to force their hand, but it had to look real. It had to hurt. They set up the scene in the music room. The camera was hidden in the corner speaker. The microphones were rigged to catch every breath, every tremble, every lie, disguised as truth. Jungkook sat in the chair. Jimin stood by the piano. Yoongi adjusted the levels. "Just talk," he said. "Don't rehearse, don't perform. Say the things you're too afraid to say for real." Jimin closed his eyes. When he opened them, he looked at Jungkook and didn't see the boy he used to laugh with in hotel corridors or sing with under dim stage lights. He saw the man who had broken his heart and the man who had tried to hold it together. Jungkook leaned forward. "So, this is the end?" "No," Jimin said softly. "This is the middle. We're still drowning." Jungkook's voice cracked. "I thought you wanted to be saved." "I did," Jimin said. "But maybe not by you." "Then who?" Jungkook asked. "Taehyung?" Jimin looked away. "Maybe. Maybe I just wanted someone to look at me without seeing something they wanted to fix." Jungkook stood abruptly. "You don't get to rewrite us like that." "I'm not rewriting," Jimin said, quieter now. "I'm just remembering differently. You said you loved me." "I did." "Then why does it feel like none of it mattered?" "Because maybe we mistook need for love." Silence. The camera kept rolling. The mics kept recording. And then, Jungkook stepped forward, voice barely a whisper. "Do you still love me?" Jimin's lips parted. He looked into Jungkook's eyes. And then he said, "I don't know." The footage was uploaded to the decoy cloud Yoongi had created. 20 minutes later, the bait was taken. An unlisted video appeared on the mirror server. The same conversation, but edited. This time, it ended with Jimin whispering, "I never loved him." Words he never said. Yoongi stared at the code. "We got him." The edit came from a secondary IP. Jin traced it to a subnet inside the company's old Seoul headquarters, long abandoned, supposedly under renovation. Jungkook grabbed his jacket. "Let's go." Namjoon stopped him. "Not without proof. Not without a plan." Jimin looked at them all. "We're not just fighting for our truth anymore. We're fighting to exist outside someone else's version of it." Yoongi nodded. "Then let's give them the final act they didn't write." They broke into the old headquarters just after midnight. Yoongi, Jin, and Taehyung took the server room. Jungkook and Jimin moved through the lower floors, silent, cautious. The place was dark, dead. The scent of dust and stale air thick in their throats. Then Jimin saw it. A single room with lights on. Inside, monitors. Screens filled with footage. Their dorm, their rooms, the practice studio, even therapy sessions. And in the middle of it, Mina, alive. She turned when they entered, blinking, surprised but not scared. "You weren't supposed to come here," she said softly. Jimin stepped forward. "Why?" "Because this is where the truth lives," she whispered. And then the second figure stepped from the shadows. A man, mid-30s, sharp eyes, company jacket, ID tag. One of the former creative directors, fired 2 years ago. No one had spoken his name in ages. He smiled. "You broke my system when you refused the comeback concept I designed," he said, voice calm. "You humiliated me, and the company let you." Jimin's mouth went dry. "So you made a new system. I made a story. One that you helped me write." He reached for something on the table. Jungkook Longit. "But it was just a hard drive. Everything is on here," the man said. "Your lies, your real tears, the silence, the betrayal, the edits, the truths you wouldn't say aloud." "Why?" Jimin asked. "What do you want?" "To make you honest," he said. "For once." Taehyung burst in then, followed by Yoongi and Jin. "Back away from the drive," Yoongi barked. The man raised both hands. "You can take it, but you'll never control the story again." "Wrong," Jimin said. He picked up the drive, and then he looked the man in the eyes. "We tell the story now. The footage never leaked again. Minna was placed under psychiatric care. The former director disappeared, vanished into legal proceedings and scandal. But the world didn't stop asking. About the photo, about the triangle, about Jimin. In an unexpected move, Big Hit released a docuseries, raw, unedited, titled "The Parts You Didn't See." And in the final scene, Jimin sat alone. No makeup, no script, just truth. "I didn't fall in love with two people," he said. I fell in love with different versions of myself when I was with them. He looked at the camera, and now I'm learning to love the version who doesn't need to be chosen at all. The screen faded to black. But the story? It was far from over. Did you ever think, Jimin said, staring out the rain-laced window of the conference room, that maybe we didn't survive the scandal? We just became a new one? The room was cold, too cold for summer. Jungkook sat across from him, body tense, fingers drumming against his knee. Taehyung was leaning against the wall in silence, arms folded, his eyes flicking to Jimin every few seconds as if watching for another fracture. Namjoon stood by the door, half in the room, half somewhere else in his mind. Jin was on the phone with the legal team. Yoongi hadn't come. He didn't say why. The docu-series had been out for 5 days. The internet was chaos. Some fans praised them, called it bravery, art, a raw defiance of PR manipulation. Others weren't so kind. You're tearing apart the group. You ruined the magic. This isn't transparency, it's a slow public suicide. And perhaps the cruelest, he should have just picked one of them and shut up. Jimin didn't read the comments, but he didn't need to. They echoed in the spaces where silence should have been. There's another protest forming, Namjoon said finally. Outside the company building. Again, Jungkook scoffed. Over what this time? Jimin's sexuality? My tears? Taehyung's face appearing for 4 seconds too long in a hug that was platonic? No, Namjoon muttered. They're demanding an apology from all 3 of you for dragging the group into personal drama. Taehyung laughed dark and humorless. Right. Because being emotionally gutted on camera was so calculated. Jimin said nothing. He just kept staring out at the world beyond the glass, where the rain made Seoul look like a watercolor painting bleeding at the edges. What happens if we don't respond? Jungkook asked. Namjoon hesitated. They'll escalate. Maybe boycott. Maybe split the fandom. Maybe tear us apart from the inside out. Like we haven't already done that ourselves, Taehyung said. Jungkook turned to him sharply. Don't start! I'm not starting, Taehyung snapped. I'm continuing. Because we keep pretending like we've moved past what happened, but we haven't. Jimin's trying to find himself in the wreckage. You're trying to punish yourself for falling apart. And me? His voice lowered. Dangerous. I'm still wondering if I crossed a line I can never uncross. You didn't, Jimin said immediately, still facing the window. How do you know? Taehyung's voice cracked. How do you know you didn't only lean into me because you were breaking? I was breaking, Jimin said. And you were the only one who didn't ask me to stop. The room went silent. Jungkook stood suddenly. I can't do this again. You don't get to run every time we touch something real, Taehyung fired. Jungkook turned on him. And you don't get to pretend like you weren't waiting in the wings for us to crumble. That's enough, Namjoon snapped. No, Jimin said, finally turning around. Let them say it. Let them finish it. Jungkook took a step forward. You know what I resent the most? That you didn't even fight for me. You fought to tell your story. You fought to protect him. But me? You let me burn. In silence. Jimin stared at him, the ache in his chest familiar now. A companion. I didn't fight for you, he whispered, because I was too busy fighting you. Taehyung looked away. Namjoon exhaled like he was holding an explosion in his lungs. This isn't productive. We need to focus on what comes next. The board's expecting a formal statement, something that closes the loop, something that unifies. Then lie, Jimin said. Everyone looked at him. Write what you want. Tell them I chose Jungkook, or Taehyung, or no one. Just tell them what they want to hear. Tell them the war is over. Namjoon stepped forward. Jimin, but Jimin's voice cut through him. I'm tired of being consumed. His voice was low, calm, final. I'm tired of being content, of being the fantasy people write fanfics about. I'm not the shy angel. I'm not the broken lover. I'm not your FIN salvation story. I'm a person who cracked under pressure and let 2 people love him the way they thought he needed, and none of us came out of it clean. Jungkook's voice was barely a whisper. So, what now? Jimin looked at them both, and for the first time in months, he looked clear. Not happy, not whole, but clear. Now we stop lying to ourselves. The formal statement was a diplomatic masterpiece, crafted by PR, signed by the board, edited by lawyers. We are a group that believes in growth, transparency, and emotional honesty. While personal moments were made public, We do not regret choosing truth over silence. We stand together not as a perfect group, but as real people still learning how to love, lose, and live. It was released at midnight. By 3 a.m., the internet was a war zone. Some fans left, some doubled down in loyalty, but others demanded something none of them saw coming. Solo Jimin. The petition had over 500,000 signatures by morning. Jimin sat in his bedroom, staring at the numbers. He didn't feel proud. He felt hollow. The idea of going solo was nothing new. But now, it wasn't about artistry. It was about escape. Taehyung knocked softly before entering. He sat on the floor beside Jimin's bed. "I saw it," he said. "I didn't ask them to do that. I know." Taehyung didn't speak for a while. Then, "I'd follow you," Jimin turned. "What?" "If you left, I'd follow. As a bandmate, a backup, a ghost if you want." Jimin shook his head. "Don't say that. I'm saying it because it's true." Silence again. Then Taehyung asked, "Do you regret that night?" "No," Jimin said. "I regret everything around it, but not that." "Do you love me?" Jimin looked at him for a long time. "I love what you made me remember, that I'm not just something to be fixed." Taehyung smiled, sad and soft. "That's not a yes. I don't know if I have a yes in me anymore." The next morning, Jungkook knocked. Jimin let him in. There were no cameras, no staged emotion, just two people who once meant the world to each other. "I hated you for a while," Jungkook said. "But not for what you did, for how easily I broke when you stopped being what I needed." Jimin nodded. "I wanted you to save me," Jungkook continued, voice cracking. "And when you didn't, I thought that meant you never loved me. And now? Now I think you were trying to save yourself." Jimin swallowed. "I was, and I still am." Jungkook looked down. "Would it be easier if I left the group?" "No." "Then what do you need?" Jimin looked him in the eyes. "I need us to stop pretending love means staying, no matter what." Jungkook nodded slowly. "Then I'll stay. Until it hurts you more than it heals you." The final scene wasn't dramatic. No stage, no press, just a video, posted by Jimin. No fanfare, no music, just him. A single candle burning beside him, and his voice. "I'm not perfect. I never was. I'm not the version you wanted or expected. I'm not always soft. I'm not always kind. Sometimes I run. Sometimes I fall. But I'm trying." He paused. "I'm not choosing a person. I'm choosing peace. For the first time in my life." He blew out the candle, and the screen went dark. No hashtags, no drama, just silence. But it echoed, because for the first time, Jimin had stopped performing, and he had finally been heard. The day the first cease and desist letters went out, the group sat in the same studio where they'd once recorded Spring Day. Now the walls, once soft with warmth, felt like stone. A paper stack sat in the middle of the table. Not lyrics, not schedules, not fan letters, legal documents. Namjoon, unusually quiet, flipped to the second page, jaw tense. His thumb tapped the paper rhythmically. "So this is how they're playing it." Across from him, Jin leaned forward, eyes scanning the fine print. "It's not just damage control. They want total silence." Taehyung pulled a page toward him, reading aloud. "Clause, Sandian, Sitdian. Effective immediately. Any member discussing personal affairs related to the events portrayed in the docuseries or involving external threats and psychological distress must refrain from interviews, social media statements, or artistic interpretations unless reviewed and approved by management." Hoseok let out a short, bitter laugh. "So we tell our truth and they try to own it." Jungkook sat in the corner, arms crossed, a bruised tension wrapped around him like armor. He hadn't said a word since arriving, but his silence wasn't passive. It was volatile. Jimin arrived late. Everyone watched him walk in. He didn't greet anyone, just set his phone down on the table, sat beside Yoongi, and looked straight ahead. There was no trace of the softness that used to define him. No trace of the boy who once cried when the beat didn't sound quite right in a demo. Yoongi was the first to speak to him. "They're forcing a gag order." Jimin nodded slowly. "Because they can't control perception anymore." Namjoon passed him a copy of the contract. Jimin didn't even look at it. "I'm not signing." Taehyung sat up. "Jimin, I'm not signing." His voice didn't rise. It was too quiet to be a threat, but too firm to be ignored. Jin leaned back in his chair. They'll bury you. They'll say you fabricated everything, that the docuseries was your personal delusion, that you manipulated footage, conversations. Then let them, Jimin said. You think the public won't believe them? Namjoon snapped. You think they won't turn on you again? They already did, Jimin replied. Twice. Jungkook looked up then. You're willing to risk everything. Again. For what? Honor? No, Jimin said. For ownership. Of my own damn life. Yoongi tossed a pen on the table. We can fight it, but it'll get ugly. Taehyung looked between them all. Then maybe ugly is the only way left, to be honest. Namjoon exhaled. We have to go public, on our terms. Jin nodded. Live, unfiltered, direct to fans. Nothing scripted, nothing polished. But not just Jimin, Yoongi added. All of us. Together. Or it won't matter. Everyone turned to Jungkook. He stared at Jimin. His face a mixture of betrayal, memory, fear, and something deeper. And then he said, I'm in. The announcement went live within the hour. Tonight, 10 p.m. KST, live stream, no labels, just truth. The company panicked. They sent managers, messages, threats. But the seven didn't flinch. At 9:57 p.m., they gathered in the practice room. Same floor, same lights, different air. This wasn't a comeback. It was a confrontation. Hosiak checked the stream stats. 2 million waiting. Jimin stood beside Taehyung. Jungkook was across from them, seated but focused. Yoongi held the camera remote. Jin paced. Namjoon fixed his mic. At exactly 10:0 p.m., the light turned green. Live. Namjoon spoke first. We weren't supposed to do this, but maybe that's the problem. Then Jin. For 10 years we gave everything. Music, smiles, silence. Then Taehyung. And when we finally showed something raw, something real, they called it selfish. Yoongi stepped in. This isn't about victimhood. This is about voice. Jungkook finally leaned forward, eyes dark. I loved someone. I hurt someone. I broke. And I let pride write a story that should have been about healing. Then Jimin. And the world held its breath. You saw parts of us you weren't supposed to see. But not because we were ashamed. Because we were trying to protect the illusion that this life doesn't come with consequences. He looked into the camera. I didn't destroy this group. Honesty did. And maybe it needed to. The stream held steady. No ads. No edits. Just pain. And presence. And then the chat exploded. Tears. Hearts. Hate. Hope. And one phrase, repeated over and over. We still choose you. After the stream, the label responded. An internal memo leaked. Plans to terminate contracts. Divide public opinion. Blacklist Jimin. Force Jungkook into solo rebranding. Pressure Taehyung into silence. But it backfired. Because the fans had already chosen, not the perfect story, but the human one. Within 48 hours, a movement formed. Let them breathe. Jimin's name trended with 3 million tweets. Not about scandal, but about freedom. And in that moment, something shifted. No longer idols. Now, witnesses. A week passed. Lawyers were replaced. Executives scrambled. And then, the offer came. A new label. Independent. Creative control. A fresh contract for all seven. Or none at all. They met in the same studio where everything once began. Jungkook arrived last. He looked at Jimin, then at Taehyung, then finally at himself in the mirror. I don't want to come back, he said. Jimin tilted his head. Then what? A return. Not to stage, not to fame, to us. Taehyung stepped beside him. What does that look like? Jungkook smiled, just barely. Maybe we start with silence. Real silence, the kind that doesn't mean something's wrong, Yoongi added. And when we're ready music, but not for charts, for clarity. Namjoon nodded. We don't owe them perfection anymore. Jin leaned forward. Then let's give them what we are, just that. And for the first time in months, maybe years, they agreed. No press release, no photo shoot, just a file, titled Breathe. A single song. No auto-tune, no choreography, no apology. Only voices, one by one, not in harmony, but in honesty. And at the end of the track, Jimin's voice whispering, "We are not what we were, but we are still here." The track ended, but the story didn't. Because healing isn't a finale, it's a beginning, and they were just now learning how to start. You think this is over just because they're cheering again? Jungkook's voice rang sharp across the cold hallway of the studio. The polished floor reflected the fluorescent lights like a sterile mirror. He stood rigid near the exit, his back half-turned, fists clenched. Jimin stood a few feet away, still catching his breath from rehearsal, not the choreography, but the emotional weight that had settled in the room since morning. Jimin didn't answer immediately. "They're not cheering for me," he said quietly. "They're cheering for the idea of me they think I became." Jungkook's expression twisted. "Is that supposed to make it easier for the rest of us?" Jimin tilted his head, eyes narrowing. "The rest of you?" Jungkook stepped forward. "You think this didn't change how people see us? You think fans didn't choose sides? You and Taehyung were handed the redemption arc, and I was handed the rage. You were angry," Jimin said, not as an attack but as fact. "I was in love," Jungkook snapped. "And you turned that into a cautionary tale." There was a long, stretched silence between them. "I didn't make you the villain," Jimin said, his voice low but firm. "You just didn't want to be seen hurting." "I wanted to be seen at all," Jungkook said, and his voice cracked. "By you, not by them." Jimin closed his eyes. He had rehearsed this conversation so many times in his head. None of those versions hurt this much. "I didn't know how to love you without losing myself," he finally whispered. "You needed someone certain. I was never that." Jungkook leaned against the wall, breathing hard. "So what now?" he asked. "We write another song about healing? Tour again and pretend we didn't rip each other apart?" "No," Jimin said. "We write a song about not healing. About what it means when the pain doesn't end just because the story did." Jungkook looked at him. Really looked. For the first time in weeks, maybe months. "Would you sing that with me?" Jimin met his gaze. "Only if we don't hold back." Jungkook exhaled a bitter half-laugh. "Holding back's never been our problem." In the production room, Taehyung listened from behind the soundproof glass. He hadn't meant to eavesdrop. He'd come to rehearse a vocal run, but the minute he heard Jungkook's voice echoing down the corridor, he'd stopped moving. The air around him felt like old paper, fragile, flammable. He watched through the sliver in the door as Jimin and Jungkook talked, fought, softened, stood a little too close, and finally walked away from each other in opposite directions. No dramatic end, just distance. He leaned against the door, his hands shaking. He had told himself that if Jimin chose Jungkook again, he'd survive it. He'd seen enough of Jimin's pain to understand why he might return to the one who once held all his broken parts. But this wasn't choosing. This was two people still bleeding in circles. And Taehyung didn't know anymore if he was the wound or the bandage. The label meeting was tense. The new team, independent, young, ambitious, sat across from the members with numbers, charts, and projections. Everyone knew what they wanted. A réunion show. One night. Raw. Real. No elaborate sets. No scripted moments. Just the seven of them. Together. No solos. No backup. Dancers. No artifice. The company called it Reconnection. Jin raised an eyebrow. Why not call it group therapy in public? Yoongi lit a cigarette outside the building after the meeting and muttered, "If they want blood, we may as well bleed on beat." Jimin stood at the window that night and stared at the empty venue across the river where they would perform. He didn't want to come back. He wanted to reclaim the memory of why they ever sang together in the first place. He turned to Namjoon. "Will they come?" Namjoon looked up from his notebook. "They already are." Jimin looked confused. Namjoon opened his laptop and turned it around. Livestream tickets, pre-orders, sold out in 34 minutes. Every seat, gone. Jimin stared at the screen. He hadn't realized how quiet his soul had become until now, and how loud love could be when it returned uninvited. 3 days before the show, a letter arrived. Not a digital message, a real, physical letter, sealed in wax. No return address. Inside, a handwritten note. No signature. Just 3 lines. You think this is closure? But I'm not done. You still owe me everything. Jimin stared at it too long. Taehyung took it from his hands, read it, and then tore it in half. Whoever it is, he said, they don't get to live in your lungs anymore. But Jimin's hands didn't stop shaking for hours. The day of the concert, it rained. Of course it did. The stage was set in an open-air venue. Minimalist, intimate. Just a piano, 7 mics, no screens, no fireworks. Jungkook walked in first, then Namjoon, then Jin and Hoseok. Yoongi arrived with a USB drive and a simple nod. Taehyung entered just behind Jimin. They didn't speak at first. Then Jin whispered, "You ready?" Jimin nodded, but no one was ready for what happened next. 30 seconds before they were set to go live, the power cut, total blackout. For a second, no one moved. Then the emergency lights clicked on. A voice echoed through the backstage. "You shouldn't have come back." Security ran. The team froze. Panic buzzed like electricity. Jimin's breath caught. That voice. Distorted. Familiar. Not Mina's. Not the director's. New. But familiar. Namjoon snapped into motion. "We go acoustic. Right now." Taehyung grabbed a stool. Jungkook took his mic and turned it off. Yoongi rolled the piano forward manually. They stepped on stage as the rain fell harder. No lights. No sound system. Just them. And the thunder. And the fans. Silent. Breath held. Waiting. Jimin took the mic. He didn't speak. He sang. A cappella. One note. Then another. His voice. Raw and imperfect. And behind him, Jungkook joined. Then Taehyung. Then Hoseok. Namjoon. Jin. Yoongi played the chords with fingers stiff from the cold. In the crowd, they sang back. In the rain. In the dark. A harmony built not by precision, but by faith. By pain. By love. After the show, soaked and shivering backstage, Jimin sat on the floor, tears mixing with the water on his face. Jungkook knelt beside him. "Do you still feel alone?" Jimin looked at him. "No," he whispered. "Not tonight." Taehyung walked over and dropped a towel over his shoulders, then sat beside them. Jungkook didn't move away. Neither did Jimin. And for once, they didn't need to choose. They just needed to stay. 3 broken hearts. 3 songs still unwritten. But finally, in tune. Don't say it if you don't mean it. Jimin said it under his breath. Quiet. Tired. His voice barely traveled through the dressing room's stale air, but it hit Jungkook like a whip. Jungkook didn't blink. His hands trembled slightly. Knuckles bruised from hitting the wall backstage 20 minutes earlier when he thought Jimin had collapsed from exhaustion. "I never said anything I didn't mean," Jungkook whispered. Taehyung stood on the far side of the room, arms crossed, back against the mirror. His reflection stared at the scene unfolding. 2 people tangled in guilt, history, and love that had turned from fire into glass. Jimin laughed softly, bitter. "Really? Not even that night, when you told me you wished none of this had happened?" Jungkook took a step forward. "That's not what I meant. You screamed it," Jimin said. "You said, 'I wish I never f***ing met you like this.' You looked me in the eyes when you said it. That was after the messages leaked. When my brother called crying because his school was harassed by fans. When my mother had to delete her number. When they were camping outside our parents' home like this is a damn drama. I was drowning. We all were," Jimin snapped. "I didn't disappear, Jungkook. I was in the next room." Taehyung's voice came low, almost a growl. "But he didn't come to you." Silence. Jungkook's eyes narrowed. "And you didn't you?" Taehyung didn't move. "He was bleeding. You walked away. You crawled into his bed. You weren't there to stop me." That was when Jimin stood. The energy shifted so violently the air felt electric. Jimin's voice dropped, steady and sharp. "Stop making me the prize in a war neither of you want to finish." They froze. Jimin's breathing was shallow, like the weight of every unsaid word over the last 2 years had finally dragged itself to the surface of his lungs. "I'm not asking you to fight for me," he said. "I'm asking you to stop using me to fight yourselves." Jungkook turned away, pacing, gripping the edge of the chair like it might shatter in his hand. "Do you have any idea how many people blamed me? Told me I drove you into someone else's arms? Do you know what it's like to be hated for loving you? I didn't ask you to love me like that, Jimin snapped. And I didn't know how to love you any other way, Jungkook yelled. I didn't have the tools. No one teaches you how to love when you're being watched by millions. Taehyung stepped forward now. And yet, some of us tried. Jungkook's shoulders dropped. No, some of you waited. Not the same thing. The air felt brittle. Yoongi entered the room then, slowly, looking like he already knew what he was walking into. He carried a sealed folder under one arm. He didn't speak for a moment. They filed the final report, he said. What report? Namjoon asked, coming in behind him with Jin and Hobie. The one from the private investigator, Yoongi said. The anonymous letters, the audio tampering, the distorted voice that kept haunting the live streams. It's not just a stalker. Jimin turned slowly. Then who? Yoongi handed him the folder. Inside, photos, screenshots, IP addresses. At the center of it all, a single name, Park Minji. Taehyung blinked. Wait, Park Minji from... She used to be with creative dev at Hybe, Namjoon confirmed. Transferred to a media subcontractor 2 years ago. She had access to staging prototypes, AI-based voice overlays, and internal communications before they wiped her clearance. She was obsessed, Yoongi said. Not with you, with the story. Jimin read the messages aloud. They ruined it. They deserve to suffer. You don't destroy love stories and walk away unpunished, Taehyung whispered. She wasn't angry at the truth. She was angry that we stopped playing roles. She wanted us to be a love triangle, Jungkook murmured. Tragedy, betrayal, redemption. She wanted art, Yoongi said. And when we became real, she decided to rewrite it herself. Jimin dropped the file on the floor like it burned. I'm so tired of being someone else's character. They canceled the press event that day. The company protested. The PR firm threatened breach of contract. The group didn't care. Jimin walked onto the empty stage that evening, no cameras, no lighting rigs, and sat at the edge. He looked out over the vacant seats, like he could still hear the crowd. Jungkook joined him, quietly. No words exchanged. Then Taehyung sat on Jimin's other side. Yoongi followed. Namjoon, Jin, Hoseok. They didn't speak. They just existed. Together. In the absence of noise. In the absence of performance. Until Jimin whispered, Do you remember when we didn't know if we'd even debut? Jin chuckled. We barely knew how to breathe together back then. Taehyung smiled. But we knew how to be together. That's what we lost, Jimin said. Not fame, not fans. That, Jungkook turned, eyes wet. Then let's take it back. How? Hobie asked. Yoongi said, By stopping everything that's not us. Namjoon stood. Let's do one last thing. But this time, let it be exactly who we are. They looked at him. He smiled. Let's record one final track. Jin's eyebrows rose. A goodbye? Namjoon shook his head. A beginning. They called the track The Echo of the Unsaid. It started with silence. Then Jimin's voice. Not singing. Speaking. I didn't always know how to tell you the truth. Sometimes I waited too long. Sometimes I said it too loud. But I never meant to hurt you with it. Then, Jungkook. I didn't always know how to love you gently. Sometimes I broke the silence instead of filling it. But I never wanted to be a storm in your peace. Then Taehyung. I didn't always know if I was healing you or haunting you. But I stayed. And I'm still here. Not as a savior, just as someone who saw you. Then all seven. We were never perfect, but we were real. The music began. No choreography, no melody meant for the charts. Just honesty, and breath, and presence. The track dropped with no promotion. It broke the internet anyway. Not because of scandal, because of sincerity. And in the weeks that followed, something rare happened. No backlash, no trending outrage. Just quiet, respectful, grieving, loving. The world, for once, understood that not all endings are meant to be explosions. Some are just soft closures. Months passed. Jimin sat in a Kiet cafe in Busan, hoodie up, no makeup, sipping coffee alone. A young girl approached hesitantly, shaking. He looked up, ready to brace. She didn't ask for a photo. She just said, Thank you for not pretending," and walked away. Jimin stared out the window after her, heart full of something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not triumph. Not return. Just peace. Later that night, he texted the group chat. "I think I finally forgave myself today." Taehyung replied with a heart. Jungkook typed, "Then maybe it's time we start again. Just not where we left off." Yoongi added, "Let's write the next album like no one's watching." Jimin smiled and wrote, "Only if we write it for us this time. No more lies. No more roles. Just 7 men. Beginning again. On their own terms?"